Hello friends, family, and other creatures of the sea, and welcome back to some professional StarCraft 2 with the Protoss player in the green, the captain. It's Harstem. Up against the always creative Terran in the blue, we have Kelazhur. A best of 5 Terran versus Protoss showdown with two players who are not afraid to show new strategies, to try new things, and to show good games for the fans. Just like I am not afraid to beg you for likes and subscribes to do the same thing. And Jimmy, what are we at? 1,422 likes on this video, on this cast. And I'll cast another one. And I'll probably do it anyways. But thank you for watching. Hopefully you've had a good day so far. And hopefully it's about to get just a little bit better. The probe almost kills the SCV. It delays the command center. Slipped around the side in order to avoid being persecuted by the Reaper, but the Reaper comes home and murders it anyways. Couldn't get anything on the other side. Gets one hit off, which might not seem like a big deal, and it isn't. But the spite will be felt for several seconds until the Reaper heals. A Stargate on the way. A Widow Mine already entrenched in a seemingly random position in the middle of the map, trying to avoid being spotted by any sort of early Protoss units. Adept will chase down the Reaper, unable to quite catch it. And Phoenixes already in production. Now, the old find the Widow Mine trick is not exactly Protoss's favorite, and there's no way to tell the Widow Mine is out there unless you're scouring every patch of ground on the entire map. But at the same time, the Phoenix is a strong choice against any early Cyclone plays. Being able to lift up or just straight up break the lock. They are vulnerable to those early Terran options, of course. But if you're able to build up enough Phoenixes without being... Oh, this is awkward. I think he saw him. I'm not an expert. Okay, I am kind of an expert. Hopefully. But, I think he knows about the Phoenixes. Which is some incredibly important information for Kelazhur here. Knowing that sending in any sort of drop is going to be a recipe for disaster. And instead is cooking up a more direct approach. And, 2 Adepts, a Stalker, and 3 Phoenixes. And a stick of bubblegum, which for some reason Protoss wouldn't even need, because Protoss don't have mouse. But anyways, that's all Harstem has for defense. Warps in a couple more Stalkers, but Kelazhur loads up. That Cyclone pops out. There's actually a probe trapping it in. Revenge for the one killed by the Reaper. And only two probes so far. Kelazhur saw that his opponent had Phoenixes. He saw that Harstem already knew that was coming across the map. He saw all these things. And then he said, aim for the bushes. That was an unmitigated disaster. I don't know where the Widow Mine went. Somehow it also died in that exchange. Maybe it tried to come into the natural or something like that. But for 3 probes, he manages to kill the entirety of Kelazhur's early game pressure. Which, for everyone but the family of those probes, I think is an absolute bargain bin exchange. That is about the best you're ever going to get. Whatever mind tricks he used in order to lull the Terrans into a false sense of security, well, should really keep them close at hand, because that was about as bad as it could ever be for Kelazhur. And now the Phoenixes will scour for anything trying to escape from the base. Well, you can't move out now. Those Phoenixes will patrol the skies and, of course, still be dangerous to things on the ground. So stim and combat shield on the way. And Kelazhur is pretty much... Oh, wow, he's even fighting the Marines, lifting them up and knocking them down in pieces. Kelazhur's stuck in his base, at least until he gets stim, combat shield, +1. Something to fight the Phoenixes, but Harstem is following that up with Mech Protoss. A classic strategy, an old one, but it checks out, as going for straight into Robo Bay, covered by the Phoenixes, is relatively fragile, but Harstem has the economy and he already has the space on the map. So he'll know the moment that Kelazhur even thinks about moving. Okay, maybe not quite that, but pretty close. And he seems to know what he's thinking pretty well based on how well he dismantled that attack. But I digress. Kelazhur does not have the economy to just throw endless waves of bio units at whatever base he decides to target next. He doesn't have the infrastructure to build Vikings and medevacs, and he has precious few of either. He doesn't have the economy to really reliably do either of those things, or even one of them. So Harstem now is going on 4 bases as Kelazhur takes his 3rd. Harstem now is getting charge and +1 as Kelazhur struggles on a single engineering bay. Harstem now is getting 5 more gateways as Kelazhur is, well, he's got his 5 racks done, so that's actually pretty solid. So overall, Harstem is in a very comfortable position, but he just doesn't have the brute force to batter down the door and say, open up. That's enough, Terrans. And Kelazhur is building up. There's always the danger of losing that one big fight to a deadly Terran army. We've seen it too many times before. And Harstem, I think, is playing it very carefully. There is such a thing as too careful, but we're far from that point, considering there's not a single Ghost Academy on the field, let alone any ghosts, unless they've really upgraded those cloaking devices. The Templar Archive's already on the way, a 2nd Forge. Should be seeing maybe a 2nd Robo as well momentarily. Goes for the Watchtower, but the gang's all here. The Colossi are spotted, not unexpected, but certainly unwelcome for the Terrans. There are Spylons all along the right side. Knows that the map is dark and full of Terrans. So just zoning out. Expeditionary groups here. Little defensive squadrons. The Phoenixes and a Colossus and some scattered gateway units underneath. Over to the left flank to shut down the drops. And then a bit of a stronger army down the center to repel a direct attack. Harstem, it's almost like he's playing a strategy game here. Dangerous. Dangerous thoughts indeed. Archon takes down the rocks. Also, everyone else was involved, but they let the Archon take credit because, it's uncomfortable if you don't. Kelazhur trying to thread the needle here with his triple drop. Still in quite a precarious position. Harstem's gonna spot it, but is that enough bio to actually grind his way through? The Phoenix is fighting. The Immortal helping out a lot. And Harstem had just enough to deal with this. Now forced to drop out. Many of the rest of these Marines will take down 1, 2, 3 medevacs out of the sky. And cuts down another angle of attack. The Phoenix is carving out a lot of space out on the field. And again, Kelazhur is pushed back towards his base, clearly trying to avoid engaging the main Protoss army. A typical Terran tactic. It's not cowardice, it's just searching alternative options. But Harstem's doing a very good job of making sure he can't get picked apart. Now there's Storm on the way, Disruptors, and a gold base as well. Harstem has 96 probes, which is arguably too many. It's almost a problem in and of itself, because his army supply is going to be maxed out at 103, yes, which is equal as my IQ to do that math so quickly. 5 more gates on the way. He's going to have 15 of them, as well as a couple robos, and of course the Stargate if we want to count it. A Dark Shrine as well. Spylon taken out. +2 weapons about to complete for Kelazhur. And now is the riskiest part for Harstem. When he doesn't have the huge money in the bank, all the tech, more gateways than Ire itself, like pre Zerg invasion. This is the moment when he's most vulnerable. As Kelazhur has maxed army supply, which amounts to significantly more than Harstem's even potential max, as well as close in upgrades as he's going to get for quite a while. So, EMP whipped out, takes the shields and the energy of the Phoenixes, knocks the rest out of the sky. That Dark Shrine is almost completed. Not that it's going to be a huge factor in these fights. There's already enough orbitals out there. Disruptor shot point blank range, easily popped before it's even able to get close. The Colossi coming back home, but depowers 2 robos and a robo bay. A single pylon depowering so much. Bit of a disaster there, but EMP carving through the stalkers. Harstem coming back to defend. The ghosts are being taken out as dramatically as they always are. And a void ray in production. Harstem now has 17 gateways. That 1 marine. Oh, and the stalkers are in position. I don't even know if Kelazhur knew about this base, though it was kind of implied. But everything else gets taken out. Now chasing down the center line. Still, a lot of ghosts with the army. Plus 2 ground armor about to complete, and that will give Harstem an upgrade advantage. But the army supply still goes to the Terran, because Harstem has 99 problems. And his economy ain't one. Oh, EMP comes through, but the army size. For the first time in his life, Harstem having some real size issues here, but Kelazhur knocking on the door, and there's just not that much to answer. The historical counter to Vikings comes out. The storm is laid down. The tanks in position to help Harstem manage his economy a little bit more efficiently. And now DT Blink is on the way. The rock's going to be taken down as Harstem opens up another opportunity and just kind of wanders into this fight. A couple DTs warped in. Full energy Templar coming down, and the storm in between the mineral line softens up the army, though doesn't do enough to really drive it back. The bio ball is getting carved up. The thermal lance is helping out so much. The tanks abandoned over to the right flank, and the DTs will take them down. Eventually a scan will help out, but the Colossi at the watchtower, a beautiful engagement. And Harstem, bit by bit, takes piece after every single part of that attack eventually carved up. The storms drove out the more ambitious bio armies. The Dark Templar undercut the tanks until they collapsed. And of course, the secondary army was driven out by the Colossi, the Archons, and everything else underneath. And now Harstem maintains a command on the game, and with money in the bank, can actually go on the attack. Though, attacking into a planetary ghost and a heap and helping of marauders is certainly not great for the life expectancy as the Colossus tumbles and the Immortals crumble. The storm! The redeeming aspect of all this, and those marauders in deep autumn colors. I can hear a Dark Templar somewhere. Takes out the Observer incidentally. It looks like some SCVs went down. And Harstem struggling in that engagement. Kelazhur gets the better end of it. Of course, there's still so much money in the bank. He's got 3 robos. He's warping in a dozen Dark Templar. Kelazhur has a zoning planetary in the center of everything. 12 DTs. What is this, a campaign mission? DT Blink, he has 15 Dark Templar in total, which is just a gratuitous number. Enough to eviscerate a planetary in 1 or 2 strokes. Slices. What happened? Take your pick. 1 DT. Well, that's awkward. Scan. Concussive shells on the way. It became obvious when he wasn't able to break the knees of that Dark Templar that he didn't have it. And honestly, not having concussive shells at this stage of the game, after all these engagements, is quite a significant mistake, considering there are 30 Marauders on the field and 30 in the unit's lost tab. So that is about 58 Marauders too late on getting that upgrade. But better late than never. More DTs warped in. And the Colossi struggling, but kiting back. Another Archon on the way, but the army's just crumbling. Meanwhile, the Dark Templar on top of the planetary. There will be a repair, but there's no repairing that. He cleaves through, and Harstem unable to take the main fight. He'll take out the base, snipes DTs, and he calls to the sky. That's a very interesting fleet beacon placement. It doesn't have to be close to the place you want to build a mothership, but sure, let's go with that. Fleet beacon is on the way as Harstem calls for aid against the late game Terran. Oh my god! The Marauders! Drawn and quartered! Oh! As the Dark Templar with the +3 upgrades against just +2 armor, getting even more done. And what now? More DTs, but Harstem just running him around. 2 more Stargates on the way. Where's that tank? Oh, left all alone out there. Another base. Harstem still in the 90s. Not of APM, of probes. So never can be sure. A Void Ray. I think a select all army action here, and without Dark Templar, those planetaries, tough nut to crack. And it's really that army supply. Another set of Immortals getting caught out. Beaten down like the souped-up Dragoons they are. The Void Ray getting a surprising amount done. And then drawing attention to itself, easily taken down. More EMPs. Air weapons +1, but endless streams of Zealots are warped in. There are 17 gateways, as well as 3 robotics facilities and 4 Stargates. The level of production is ridiculous right now for Harstem. And for now, he can barely afford it. With that YouTuber money and a 10-minute income lead, he's able to bankroll just an obscene amount of production. And Kelazhur is now down to 150 supply and struggling to get any closer to 200 as Harstem just leans on that warp gate key. And now the army is almost entirely Stalker Zealots and a few DTs scattered in. He's given up on those. Oh, the robo units were just taking too long to get over here, but he's given up almost entirely on the expensive robo units. Never give them such an obvious target, but instead grind them down to the war of attrition. That seems to be the tactic here. DTs actually blink out of the way. One of the command centers is taken out. An EMP, but here comes some... Wait, where are you going? This is like a minute 4, not a minute 19 tactic, Harstem. The blink stalkers behind the middle line, mildly inconveniencing some SCVs. Meanwhile, the rest of the army comes in. A bit more committed. The storm... My god, the planetary didn't die. More storms to the north side. And again, the damage is split. And Harstem going to be losing his Colossi. The Stalkers are still doing a lot of damage to the units that try to run straight by him, which is just downright disrespectful. DTs over to the north, as Kelazhur still struggling to compete with the attacks on both sides. It's been Harstem all the way this game, despite breaking on multiple planetaries. He still hasn't really taken any damage back at home. Kelazhur down to 52 SCVs. Harstem still chilling at 95 probes. More Dark Templar. Wow. The mules? Will the mules finally be able to close the income gap? For a moment? Not quite. As Harstem opens up even more of the rocks on the map, sending out another wave of Zealots with a Dark Templar commander in tow. +2 air weapons is on the way for the Stargate units that Harstem knows he may eventually be forced to build. Pays to be prepared. Well, stop position on the SCVs to make things more difficult for everything to filter through. Another Zealot, but it just seems endless. Harstem has lost 100 Zealots. And how many Dark Templar? 17? He's warping in 9 more of them. I wonder if he remembers he got any air weapons upgrades, or even that he got a fleet beacon at all. I'd give it about a 50-50 at this point. 99 probes! Well, bit of a macro player. That disruptor, too big for its britches, which it doesn't own. Kelazhur now realizing that Harstem's been pretty comfortably mining from what really should be his base. But Harstem finally throws out a Ruptor shot. Clips a Marauder or two. That is an ambitious recall. Will be shut down. And the recall does go on cooldown. But he does not get the effect. And finally, the probe count is cut down. Just like the planetary to the 6 o'clock. The DTs find an opportunity. And they just slice it. Oh my. The Marauders ran right into it. And here comes the... well, some of those zealots a little distracted, but... the Gateway Army. And the Disruptors in the fray as well. The Stalker line. Blink Stalker Disruptor. Viking hits the deck mid-fight. Ooh. Clips another few Marauders. Knocks a couple Metavacs out of the sky. Some fadeaway shots looking for an opportunity. As Kelazhur has managed to fight off every army thrown at him so far. But not do much more than that. Comes through the center of the map. The army supply is still dangerously close to even. EMPs as well. Disruptor finds a zealot, and oh, that one finds a little more. Cores out the Terran. And despite all this, Harstem still without that much in the bank, but Kelazhur not even that close to maxed. The storms certainly aren't helping. That is a lot of army supply. Depowers a warping. Oh, this is fire everything! Point blank range. Harstem tries to fire off the Ruptors. It doesn't pan out, but the gateway units will finish off the rest. Kelazhur escapes with one medevac into the clutches of the Stalkers, and a GGWP is thrown out as Harstem decisively, if not quickly, takes game number 1. The Phoenix is a premium choice, able to keep control of the situation, but it wasn't until the Dark Templar came out. Like so many times in the story of StarCraft 2, it takes a Dark Templar in an awkward spot to really get things going. And Harstem now off to a 1-game lead. But Kelazhur certainly showing that he's not going to go down easily either. So, game 2, Ocean Boy. Harstem truly a macro player. I do think it's one of those situations where it's so ingrained. Building more workers. Especially, and I'm going to credit this, or discredit, I don't, to being a bit of a streamer. Okay? It's one of those things you tell everyone. All the time. You make any sort of guide or tutorial. It's like, just build more workers, and then build more stuff. And Harstem practicing what I assume he preaches. And eventually grinding it down. But I think it gave a skewed perspective of the fights. Is very simply, Harstem played it like Age of Empires over here. But in Age of Empires, all your army units cost 1 supply, with a few exceptions. So that means his army just so small. At no point was he able to really go head-to-head with Kelazhur's 20-30 more supply, which makes sense. But by choosing units like the Dark Templar to dart in and slice up those planetaries, he's able to eventually make good on it. And of course, having an income lead for like 15 minutes straight certainly didn't hurt. And he made use of it. Like, there is a max amount, 16 workers per base, 2 per patch, and then up to 24 can be efficient. Despite it turning red, which we all know is very scary. It really should be yellow until 24, because you get reduced efficiency. Because what happens is the workers, you see, they're tag teaming it here. As one worker gets to the minerals, the other one comes up. But as you get more and more work, you see this guy coming in like, what's going on? Like, whose job is this? And eventually they start bouncing around. So that is why having more than 16 is less efficient. Because that third worker sometimes has to wait around and figure out what's going on. This is more relevant on the further away patches than the close ones. Not that that's particularly important. What I'm trying to say is, in order to make full use of 99 probes, you have to have at least like 4 base. Because 22 workers up to maybe 28 or so is the number to be efficient. And not just like have a better benefit long distance bound on each base. So I'm trying to say, I'm not actually sure. I assume there was a point to that. but I'm just going to end it all with like and subscribe, and then point out that it seems like we're doing the same thing again. I mean, Kelazhur's just making a casual Widow Mine. Is this a drilling claws rush? Oh, filthy. You disgusting Terran. It's not the same thing. It's a drilling claws rush, which is the filthiest of builds. Harstem is going for Phoenix into Robo, so he's going to have, on paper, the counter. But when it comes to burrowed explosive missile platforms, which are definitely undersold by calling them mines, well, paper no longer covers everything. So, this is one of those incredibly high risk, but also immensely high reward builds that if Harstem shuts this down, that's it. Like, there's nothing to follow this up. It's so easy to just build enough, and your army is 4 Widow Mines. That's pretty much it. There's 9 Marines as well on the ground, but if this drop gets shut down by Phoenixes without killing probes, without at least knocking out some units, then the game just ends in Harstem's favor. But at the same time, those Widow Mines, and here's the danger, is he doesn't know that Drilling Claws is done. You cannot pull the probes away quickly enough. They will burrow and fire before you get your probes away, unless you pull away the moment you see the medevac. In that case, obviously. But he's waiting for it, and the Drilling Claws, he picks up 1, but he doesn't get 1 of them, and it gets 3 probes. That could have been so much worse. But it wasn't. 3 probes. And he's gonna chase down the medevac. Kelazhur might get it out. So it wasn't an utter failure. But it did not go well for our Terran player. Yeah. He loses the Observer on the other side. And no, that was bad. It looks like another game where Harstem is going to use those Phoenixes in order to essentially just keep Kelazhur bottled up in his base. They worked out incredibly well last time in a kind of similar situation where Kelazhur's just like, everybody thinks they're Clem until faced with any amount of defense. And this is my experience as a marginally less accomplished player. Large margin. But, oh, the Phoenixes doing their mating dance. That's how they make more Phoenixes. It's a fiery experience. Anyways, speaking of extended thermal, this is also my experience and what I've seen from many Terrans out there, is when Clem does it, when Clem comes in with a Cyclone and 4 Marines and a medevac, and he comes away with 9 probe kills and the medevac, it looks like a genius move. But when you do something twice as committed and get half the results, suddenly you look silly. And the threshold there and the timing is so almost imperceptibly small, yet the results are so incredibly clear on the difference between those two things. I feel like that was kind of fitting a square peg into a non-existent hole from Kelazhur. He didn't know exactly what he was doing with, but he's like, I'm just doing it anyway. And now Harstem has total map control. He didn't just walk across and win the game, because with Phoenixes, they're not really a win right now. They're a grind out incremental advantages over several minutes sort of unit, which doesn't really work as a marketing slogan, but not forgetting concussive shells this time. Now this is awkward. Or is charge done? No. Really, run! While you still can! +1's about to be done. And Harstem actually... Well, Kelazhur took a relatively quick 3rd in the grand scheme of things. So he's able to put together quite an army on the field. And Harstem has kind of filled out the entire tech tree as he gets upgrades, more gates, second robo, has a Templar archives done. Of course, he already has all those phoenixes out of the Stargate. His tech shrubbery is filling out nicely. Bye, Billy. So Kelazhur, he can't know how relatively weak Harstem is. It's very hard to tell, especially the way Harstem's been playing, which is kind of splitting up all his units. It's very hard to tell whether you're walking into an army that will crush you or something you can potentially deal with. But now Harstem's actually moving up. There's multiple siege tanks back at home. The kind of panic pickup. It happens to the best of us. That scan with 3 siege tanks to backstop this and equal upgrades. There's potential here for Harstem's attack, but it also could end in disaster. Those phoenixes have mostly full HP and energy. The first ghosts are coming up. Colossi lancing the command center. May very well get a cancel on it. Here we go. Charge lots drawing tank fire to the south side. And the Colossi coming up. Target fire. The missile turret is helping out a surprising amount. And the boys are pulled. And there's not much underneath the Colossi, but they still stand. As well as the sentries. I think everything that wasn't a sentry, a robo, or a Stargate unit died. But if there was anything you want to keep alive, it's exactly that. And the force fields actually lock in a bunch of the bio army. EMPs land on the phoenixes. They will be thinned out, as will the bio army again. But there's not much underneath. Precious few units on either side. And now just a handful of marauders will chase down this final Colossi. Oh, he almost gets it with the last shot, but he saves it. Oh, be careful. Don't let him down. Well, now he's gonna be very upset. Harstem is up 50 supply, warping in more Archons. He's still mining comfortably, and he's killed a lot of SCV, so tie goes to the leader here. And it's not even really a tie. He definitely did more damage to Kelazhur than he took in return, because he's fighting on his doorstep right now. The boys are forced to be pulled. And there's not even any medevacs left. He's been building Vikings to be able to knock out these Colossi. And Kelazhur, it's getting too hot. The scan. That's a lot of Immortals and charge lots. Without medevacs, this army can't withstand. Down 60 supply. I think that's just going to be a bit too much. The orbital, it's lifted. But the thing is, Harstem's taking a 5th base. He hasn't been slouching on the probe production. He's at 79 again. He continues building up. Oh, wow. The anti-air is 1 Archon. What about the Viking? Okay. A very awkward scenario as Kelazhur realizes there was a probe here? Not anymore. Yeah, maybe more than none stalkers is, wow, there are 7 Immortals on the ground here. Which means the orbital will lift to the only place still safe. Space. Oh, or the air. Close enough. And the Terran army is trying to hold. The Vikings hit the deck and are immediately obliterated by the Immortals. Archons coming up for more. EMPs will land, but a little late to hit the Archons. A Whittle Mind. He actually splits off the sacrificial Archon. And Kelazhur is not dead. But I don't think that's going to remain true for much longer. There's an observer. Clears out the mine. Medevacs are out of energy without even fighting because these units are already so badly bruised. There goes the orbital. The upgrades are finishing. He just can't put enough units on the field as Harstem grinds him down. It's just too damn much. Harstem 2-0. But now we're going into Ghost River, which, if there ever was an auspicious map for the Terrans, it would be most of Ghost River. Another solid execution out of Harstem. I thought he was pressing it maybe a little too far, but it ends up being just enough. And now, match point for the captain. Kelazhur, what are you doing? Oh, it's an NG Bay blocking that. Harstem. He actually scouts down looking for exactly this. He scouts off a gate. Or a little later. Pulls a few extra probes. He's going to find it relatively early, which, well, as long as he gets the SCV, or pushes the SCV away, it's not going to... nope. You, sir. Sir. No. No. Sir, you can't be doing that! This is private property. The probes will take it down. Quite a ritual here. None of this filthy technology. We warp things in, we don't build them. Well, then how do you know how to repair them when they get damaged if you don't know how to build them in the first place? Shut up, filthy Terran. Wow, that SCV actually came back and was promoted to Command Center Builder for its war experience, which, you know, that's a pretty decent pension package there. But, of course, comes with the danger of getting sniped in a single hit by an Adept, but at the same time, not much lost, so... Twilight Council, straying away from the Stargate and headed towards, well, very likely Blink Stalkers, but keep your options open. Did he trade out the SCV? He did! Decided he didn't want the hazard pay anymore. And that was a smart choice, considering the Adept came up, and out goes the SCV building the command center. There's a Cyclone on the way, though. Adept knows better than to stick around. See what the Terrans have cooked up for it. And the Adept... Well, this is not going to end well. He manages to get away. And you know what they say, that which doesn't kill you leaves you permanently damaged, both emotionally and physically, unable to be healed. And inflicts wounds which will stay with you for the rest of the game until maybe you find the blissful embrace of death. Which I said was a lot to say, but, you know, we got nothing but time. Kills the Cyclone at the cost of an Adept, but a decent trade. The Cyclone by far the most dangerous threat in that composition. And now Kelazhur with triple racks and no stopper. He's hunting for that other Adept out there. The scan spots the Twilight Council. And nothing else. And there's nothing else to see. Oh, the Adept is found and killed. And this is just an all-out two-base timing here from Kelazhur. This is a very solid anti-Blink Stalker build. He's going to have multiple tech labs early, siege tanks. The Blink is optimistic at best. But, if he's continuously blinking and blind and doesn't see this sort of defense, then Harstem might be teleporting into his doom. But with the amount of cautious observers and pragmatic play we've seen from him, I seriously doubt he's committing to the all-in. And, well, part of that is because he's already taking a third Nexus and only has 2 gates. So, certainly, the Blink Stalkers are just to put on a little bit of pressure, keep Kelazhur honest, do his best impression of what those Phoenixes were able to do in the previous games. But otherwise, just stand by and make sure he gets that third base up safe. A few more Stalkers ambling up. Still no starport at all out of Kelazhur. Really focus. Is he gonna pull the boys? Drive-by Cyclone. Locks onto some probes. Kills them remarkably fast. Wow. Getting so many probes. The Stalkers try to kite back. That 4 kills by the Cyclone. It just casually made its way into the base. The Stalkers are putting the blood tax on the Bio Army on its way across. There is nothing they can really do here. No concussive shells yet. Just have to eat the losses. And very importantly, the Nexus, is done. Which means he can overcharge that shield battery. Of course, it's hard to overcharge a shield battery that's dead. So that is a major flaw in that plan. But usually having the Nexus done quickly is actually easier to defend than one that's halfway done. Obviously with that overcharge. But losing the battery right off the bat, I think, has made this an order of magnitude more difficult here for Harstem. There's 3 siege tanks. There's still no starport for Kelazhur, who's narrowed down the good units here early on. The force fields mildly inconvenience the Bio Army. 7, 8 probes dead alongside the Nexus. Harstem's supply blocked. And Kelazhur comfortably taken. He still does not have a starport either in production or on the field. But he does have a 3rd command center on the way. And an engineering bay as well. Which is quite late on both those, but the starport certainly the most so. Couple more racks. Our siege tanks are already set up. But this is kind of the reverse of game 1, where Kelazhur now has map control. He has his economy isn't incredible, but he has the standing or sieged up army to repel pretty much anything Harstem throws at him. As long as he doesn't get his Bio Army force fielded, one of those Marauders squeezes up the ramp. 1 gets caught, a cautionary tale. 2 more get caught, which is even more cautionary. And losing those is not helpful, but not nearly the pickoffs that Harstem needs in order to actually turn this into an attack. Extended thermal lance on the way. Notably, no forge at all for Harstem. No upgrades. Besides, obviously, the basic unit ones, but it looks like he's trying to fill in another set of units. He will get the Observer, but it costs a bit more bio. The gateways are coming online. Harstem trying to get back on track here. And doing a applaudable job, but Kelazhur has a lot more momentum, and just being even on economy with this sort of army is enough to be very dangerous to the captain. He has to chart a course through very treacherous waters now. Staying out on the map is a smart idea to be able to take an engagement before the tanks siege up. But at the same time, you're playing with fire. And I'm not talking about extended thermal lens, I'm talking about beautiful force fields incinerating those Marauders with the Colossi. And that is exactly what he needed. And that is why he's out on the map. Because if Kelazhur makes a mistake, like he just did, then he can slice off a chunk of the army and roast it up for his non-existent Protoss dinner. As well as having that War Prism. Doing a great job tearing him apart. The Zealots in the main, and now putting together an attack at the front. That is 5, 6 siege tanks. He's unsieging the tanks, gonna try to save them. Which, an interesting choice. Most of the Bio Army was caught by the War Prism and the charge lots, of which there are still 2 at the natural. And the War Prism isn't dead either. So Harstem almost gets the orbital command. The tanks are sieged. The Archon's under fire. And Kelazhur finding himself in a very, very difficult position. He had command of the game to some extent, but Harstem has done everything he needed and is now doing even more. Slicing up SCVs. 19 SCVs dead in the last minute or so, as Harstem takes a 4th base, finishes off those upgrades. A wave of mules will drop. Kelazhur managed to maintain enough SCVs to keep his economy up and running. But now Harstem, I think, is back on track. And with the army he needs. The only thing really lacking here are the upgrades. Mostly across the board, as Kelazhur is now getting +2 weapons. He doesn't even have armor in production. He only has 1 engineering bay, and he's focused on the attack. That War Prism, there's no Viking to deal with it. 2 Vikings now in production. Obviously, oh. Well, Vikings down. Just in time. And with that Warp Prism taken down, Kelazhur can focus all his defenses where he needs them most. Right at the front. I think the Observer spotted the medevac load up and head out. I'm sorry. The medevacs load up and head out to the north side. And Harstem has dragged himself back into it. But he's certainly not out of the woods yet. A triple drop coming in. No hope of a recall. Now that he needs it. His army's standing by. Takes out the cannon easily. The pylon. The Blink Stalkers finish off one of the medevacs with all hands. Kelazhur trying to come in. Vikings straying ahead of themselves. And he's able to catch one. The army's all over the place right now. Dark Shrine on the way. Another War Prism loads up some more charge lots. Drops on both sides. Warp Prism speed about to complete. This command center, somebody just needs to come cut the ribbon on it. I don't think Kelazhur noticed. This command center's 99% done. That's a bit problematic. Finally finishes it off. Double robo pumping out disruptors now. Harstem takes down the rocks, opening up more of the map. As generally tight spaces favor the Terrans and concaves. Kelazhur taking his fourth. Sensor tower as well. And despite their best efforts, both these players are going to be dragged into a much more macro game as they both finally get towards maxing out. +2 weapons only up against 1-1 Protoss, going on +2/+1. So Harstem will have the upgrade advantage momentarily. Kelazhur prioritizing only the weapons upgrades for Terran, which is quite a unique situation. Hey, just don't get hit and you don't need any armor. It's big brain gaming. Sensor towers covering the 3rd and the 4th. The siege line making itself very much known. Meanwhile, Vikings actually chasing a War Prism all the way back to Harstem's base. That production tab is pretty insane right now with Storm Observer Speed, +3 weapons, +2 armor, DT Blink, Observers, Disruptor, High Templar. Harstem getting the greatest hits of Protoss right now. And here's the problem. He can't warp in to defend the drop he just spotted because he's maxed out, which is a bit disastrous. And there's no Templar in that. Well, there's a Dark Templar in that prism. A Disruptor can help. It doesn't, but it could have. Like, get sniped off immediately. And Harstem is slowly but surely dragging back to defend. Kelazhur a bit of a late pickup, but still gets 2 medevacs out of there. Now the main army is angling towards the 3rd. And Harstem caught a bit flat-footed here on the rotation. The drop in the main base as well. The Disruptor shot from downtown clips a tank. He's still a bit out of position here. Still struggling with this exact spot. It's not getting any easier. Harstem, a Dark Templar delaying. 8 probes dead. The drop in the main finally going to be cleaned up by a smattering of gateway units. I think Harstem actually being maxed out when it came to defending the drop has spiraled a bit. And now is struggling to defend anything at all. The Vikings snipe off a Colossus. Fadeaway shot from the Ruptor comes up short. Takes out 1 Nexus. Another one on the agenda if Kelazhur finds motivation for his troops. Easily gonna take it out. It's gonna be close, and the recall is shut down. 0 for 2 on recall so far, at least at key moments. And the disruptors about to show up to the party and find out that, well, almost everyone's dead. Pretty terrible party. Meanwhile, caught in the corner, snipes off another Ruptor, gets another Archon. That weapons upgrade paying off with dividends. And Harstem loses a whole heap in help and a probes. He's down to 54 against Kelazhur's 64. And Kelazhur, while he lost a few SCVs and was delayed, he still has all his bases intact. He has most of his reinforcements just chilling in the main. There must have been a warp prism at some point. Don't know if there's still a warp prism on the map. Headed right back across. The drop comes back in for another round. He's gonna take out the reinforcing zealots. We'll kill the rest of the probes in the main. We'll target the pylon. And that will depower the gateways that were chrono boosted. Now just working on the Dark Shrine. And the momentum has certainly been captured by Kelazhur, who's now working on all the bases on his side of the map. Scouting disruptor spotted. Harstem still has enough probes to put together his army. How many Ruptors are left? Just the one. As well as one high tech. He does have Storm, but it's an oh well. There's no Templar in that prism. Just Zealots. And I think this one's gotten away from the captain. It's going to be a very narrow path to make it out of this. As Kelazhur has the infrastructure back at home, he has the amount of bases in the economy. Harstem isn't enjoying a massive income disparity like he has in the previous games. Kelazhur has the advantage there as well. And it's not going to get any easier, as Kelazhur now is maxed out to Harstem's 130. That's not enough. He's gonna start air weapons level 1, which seems exceedingly optimistic for this stage of the game. But he's nothing if not pragmatic. Considering he doesn't yet have a Stargate, and Kelazhur is not going to give him much time to get one. Somehow Harstem has retaken the worker lead, as a consistency with probe production is his middle name. I have weird middle names in Dutch. EMP hits. GG. Taps it out. Kelazhur's on the board. A strong effort from our Terran, but Harstem eventually falls. Neither player dying easily, but they are dying in these games, and the momentum shift was dramatic, especially as he's able to snipe off multiple bases. I think Harstem just couldn't really find the angle of attack he needed. And that early damage, like losing the third base early, when you stick your neck out like that and get it chopped at by the siege tanks and the bio army, you gotta come back with a strong... And he almost brought it back. He did exactly what he needed to do, which is stay aggressive and hope to get a pick-off. But it wasn't enough. And that means Kelazhur is going to drag us to game number 4 on Amphion. Still, though, I think Harstem has the overall advantage by just a small percentage. If the game goes relatively according to plan for both sides, it seems like Harstem has the edge. But Kelazhur is willing to commit. And Harstem, I think, kind of hedges his bets in a way that sometimes leaves him vulnerable, like we saw there. Though, of course, that's also paid off. If you have a slight income advantage, it can become a dramatic one if you shut down a drop or two. As the Terrans get more and more desperate. And believe me, they'll lie to you and say they aren't, but they always are. Factory's on the way. Probe is diligently scouting for any sort of shenaniganry. Technical term. And a Stargate. So, is it a coincidence that Harstem lost the only game he didn't go Stargate so far? Possibly. But I think part of it is that about 70 to 90% of Protoss versus Terran games start with Blink. Alright, it's well accepted to be the best option. The Stargate is just higher risk for arguably less reward sometimes. But what that also means is that almost every Terran player has a direct and well thought out response to Blink. Like we saw with Kelazhur with his no Stargate, or no Starport rather, just mass bio build. It was designed to crush the Blink Stalkers. And it did. It completely succeeded in that effort. So I think by going Stargate, even if it doesn't have as a strong utility as the Blink early, especially against larger armies, it throws the Terran off just a bit. Just enough to maybe find another advantage with whatever the follow-up ends up being. But we'll see if any of that matters, because Kelazhur's just coming straight across the map with his first units here. The Marines are on the doorstep. There was an Oracle being sent across already that might be able to delay the third base entirely. Shield battery is not done, and that is going to be a very long couple of seconds. He's just going for the pylon, which could be reshielded. A couple extra seconds spent on that pylon, though, make a big difference. The command center, did he even... I don't think he even delayed it. Maybe he killed one SCV. It comes down to defend. Third command center is on the way. Cyclone locks onto the Phoenix. Here comes the Oracle to deal with everything on the ground. And just holds that Cyclone in place for the Stalker. And then lets the Oracle have at it, which runs out of energy promptly. And creates an awkward exchange where nobody's happy at the end. As all of the Marines are killed. But the Stargate units are out of energy to perpetuate the attack. More barracks on the way. Third command center. Already building that orbital. Harstem trying to catch up with the third nexus of his own. And it would be considered pretty quick. It's just Kelazhur rushed a third CC. Okay, now that's not a misclick. That's not a, I guess I'll get air weapons. He's going mass air. Is he gonna get a fleet beacon? Who goes +1 air Phoenixes? No, it has to be more. There must be more. You could just open the depot, bro. No. I won't do. I. We've all had those days. It says push, not pull, and I only pull. Okay. My flabbers are gasted by this +1 air weapons rush for the mass Phoenix. Harstem saw what happened when he didn't go Phoenixes, and he's doubling, tripling down on them, making sure he will never be left without Phoenixes again. Kelazhur's doing a very similar build, the very delayed starport with mass. Oh, the SCVs are pulled. Now, if those Phoenixes had +1 air weapons, the tank would have died. That's a good point. I don't... Wait, why was the tank there? Restroom break. I don't think the tank can get through. Yeah, well, these are just creating so many issues. The CV grabs the mineral. Come on! Yeah, takes a little more space than that. Just like your mother. Now, Phoenixes continue production. Going towards double digits. Extended thermal lance on the way for the Colossi. A nearly full mech Protoss army. And now, why do the tanks keep getting caught like this? And down it goes. +1 air weapons completing right after the tank died. But we'll call it, we'll say it made the difference. More Cyclones on the way as well. Just to zone out these Phoenixes. And there it is! There it is! A fleet beacon on a Harstem and a second Stargate as well. And on this map, of all maps, the quick air rush distance. He's like, no, it's for Phoenix range and +2 air weapons. And you know what? Maybe. That would certainly be a unique choice. Though, if there was ever a map to do it on. +1 air armor on the way. We get a second cyber core for those upgrades.
It's about.
We'll see. Phoenix is dotting in for more carriers. Wowee. A carrier, and it's not quite a rush, but it is about as quick as you can get carriers while still pretending to play a normal game. So I'm going to go ahead and, for legal purposes, call this a carrier rush. As Kelazhur has not been able to put together a single attack besides that half-hearted early pressure. Actually, it was full-hearted, just wasn't much. Which would have worked a lot better if Harstem was going for Blink, but yet again, it is the Stargate, which... The second carrier, and a mothership on the way. Oh, Harstem. And, well, that's a lot of Phoenixes. I assume Kelazhur knows about the +1 air weapons at this point. He's just building up. He's going to the 200 supply, and he's going to have it quicker than Harstem. So the counter to carriers, just carriers, is Marines. Now, once you add in some Storm and maybe some Colossi underneath, it becomes less effective, obviously. But the actual straight-up counter to mass carriers with nothing else supporting it is Marines. They can either just grind through the interceptors and kill the carriers themselves, completely invalidate the interceptors. They can be rebuilt so quickly. But again, Harstem is not only building carriers. He's got 2 Colossi on the ground. He has the Phoenixes as well to zone out the medevacs, which the carriers are much less accomplished at. That scan is not going to tell him anything. Will he scan the main? Where he'll see a mothership. And now it's important to note how fragile the mothership is. Consult this diagram that we got here from Terran Intel. You see, you look closely, the mothership is made out of paper. Thus, very easy to destroy with many bullets. Phoenix range is on the way. The Oracle stays alive. The Oracle, a big deal here for keeping track of that Terran army without having to get in firing range. A scan, and now he knows. If he didn't know before, he's very aware now. Oh my god, he just picks up. He can see you. And here come the carriers, the mothership. Active cloaking. He's caught at the corner. That was an incredibly ill-fated move. The carriers just grind through 40 supply of bio. Effectively untouched. The rest of the Terran army in the center of the map. Just trying to get it done here. 4 siege tanks with it, 10 marauders. He would not have built nearly this many marauders or tanks if he knew he was dealing with a mass carrier play. But is Harstem just gonna base trade? This army, ghosts are dying to cannons. Another traffic jam with the tanks. There's another stasis ward in a precarious position that could easily sandbag this. Meanwhile, the carrier army, the mothership has been EMP'd, will get outflanked by the turrets. The mass turrets helping out a lot, but the carriers will eventually work through them. And Kelazhur struggling to put together any sort of real anti-air defense. He was caught flat-footed by the carriers here. And now he's being picked up, dropped down, and run around. The EMPs are good, but you don't need shields with this many interceptors. 23 SCVs dead, the rest of the army coming back to defend. The Colossi still burninating their way through the countryside. And Harstem, with the carrier rush towards victory, is now looking very able to claim it. 4 carriers simultaneously. I don't see Kelazhur breaking this army, and even if he does, there's another one coming across. Those carriers are not dying. There's still 70 interceptors on the field. There's only 10 Marines and 3 Ghosts and a couple Cyclones. It's not gonna be enough. 2-2 done for the carriers. They have better upgrades than the Marines. Harstem, the Golden Armada, the oldest build. Yeah, really more of a big game hunter's one, but enough to hunt the big game of Kelazhur and get 2 Gs out of him. 3-1. Harstem will be the final scoreline. A strong performance, and Kelazhur unable to come up with an answer for Harstem's just strong, solid, supple. Okay, Stargate play. Smooth. And the captain leading the Golden Armada to victory in a very appropriate ending to quite a dramatic series, but really showcasing how Harstem is thinking towards the future in most of those games. And hopefully you enjoyed, and hopefully it made your day just a little bit better. Make sure to check out Harstem, and I believe Kelazhur has some on YouTube as well. Otherwise, if you got the means of motivation, be awesome to check out Patreon or YouTube membership. But I hear liking and subscribing is still free, at least for now. So thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Good luck, have fun, stay chill.